These are the pictures from when Bangladesh, formerly known as East Pakistan, was hit by a cyclone in 1970. It stands as one of the deadliest tropical cyclones humanity has ever faced, claiming the lives of nearly 500,000 people and displacing millions. This cyclone, coupled with other challenges, sparked a wave of liberation from West Pakistan. On December 16, 1971, Bangladesh achieved independence through a bloody war with West Pakistan. In the early days of independence, the nation confronted significant challenges, including high population density, low per capita income, chronic food shortages. Life expectancy was a mere 26 years, and child mortality exceeded 37%. The economic conditions were far from optimal, leading many to believe that the country was destined to remain impoverished indefinitely. However, today's Bangladesh presents a starkly different narrative. Over the past 5 decades, the country has undergone remarkable economic and social progress, emerging as one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Its GDP per capita now surpasses that of its former rulers and peers, India and Pakistan. The success of Bangladesh is attributed to various factors, including a vibrant civil society, a flourishing export-oriented garment industry, substantial remittance inflows, and a pragmatic foreign policy. Today, Bangladesh stands as the world's second-largest garments exporter, closely trailing behind China. The intriguing question remains, how did Bangladesh reverse its destiny? This is the story compelling of the rise of Bangladesh. Upon the departure of the British from India, the Indian subcontinent underwent a partition, resulting in the formation of 3 dominions: West Pakistan, India, and East Pakistan, now recognized as Bangladesh. There was divide from the beginning between East and West Pakistan. Despite being distinct regions, both East and West Pakistan were governed centrally from West Pakistan, establishing an inherent divide for power. The majority in East Pakistan spoke Bengali, yet the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, designated Urdu as the national language.
Let me make it very clear to you, leave no doubt, that the state language of Pakistan is going to be Urdu and no other language.
This linguistic imposition fueled the Bengali language movement, as the people of East Pakistan demanded the recognition of Bengali as a national language. Between 1948 and 1960, East Pakistan contributed 70% to export earnings, but received only 25% of import earnings. The West possessed a growing number of textile mills, while the East struggled with a significant disparity. Over time, a substantial transfer of resources, totaling $2.6 billion, occurred from East to West Pakistan. Additionally, there was a perception that much of the income generated in the East was redirected towards conflicts in Kashmir. From 1963 to 1965, East Pakistan experienced economic deprivation, with resources favoring West Pakistan's development. Despite efforts to address these disparities, Pakistan was set to hold its first general elections after 23 years of independence. Prior to that, it was entirely ruled by Pakistani army. In these elections, the Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujib-ur-Rehman, secured a resounding victory, winning 288 out of 300 seats in the Provincial Assembly and 167 out of 300 seats in the National Assembly. Despite the resounding victory, the Awami League was denied the opportunity to form a government by the military administration of Pakistan, led by General Yahya Khan, due to the military's reluctance to allow a party from East Pakistan to be part of the federal government. This denial intensified tensions between the military and the democratically elected party. On November 12, 1970, East Pakistan was severely affected by a tropical cyclone, considered one of the deadliest in history. This cyclone claimed the lives of 300 to 500,000 people in East Pakistan, and the affected population deemed relief efforts by the West Pakistani government insufficient, feeling a sense of neglect. The culmination of these events sparked a wave of liberation sentiments among the common people, leading to a desire for separation from Pakistan. Consequently, the situation escalated into a civil war, ultimately resulting in the dissolution of Pakistan and the establishment of the newly independent state of Bangladesh. However, If you believe that this marked the resolution of all the problems facing the Bangladeshi people, I must emphasize that it's just the beginning of the new struggles. Before further moving on, if you have watched this video so far, then please hit the like and subscribe button to support the channel. Emerging from the ashes of war in 1971, Bangladesh was a fledgling nation grappling with immense challenges. The country, then the world's second poorest, was ravaged by conflict and faced a daunting path to recovery. Its economy, primarily agrarian, was in shambles, with its productive assets depleted and infrastructure in ruins. The newly formed nation had to tackle numerous issues, including rebuilding its transportation, communication, trade networks, and restoring its power supply. In 1973, elections swept Mujib into power with an overwhelming majority. As the leader of the Awami League, the driving force behind the independence movement, Prime Minister Sheikh Mujib-ur-Rehman was tasked with addressing Bangladesh's myriad problems, including restoring law and order and building the nation's political institutions and infrastructure. However, the initial enthusiasm soon faded as the state adopted a policy of economic socialism. It took over industries and businesses left behind by Pakistanis. But economic difficulties persisted. Prices soared, and in 1974, a severe famine exacerbated shortages, leading to a significant loss of life. In response to the crisis, Mujib curtailed freedoms and assumed dictatorial powers. Corruption and nepotism flourished under his rule. On August 15, 1975, Mujib and most of his family were assassinated, leaving only his two daughters who were abroad at the time. Political turmoil ensued, with a series of coups and counter-coups until Major General Zia-ur-Rahman seized control of the nation. He subsequently founded the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP. Zia bolstered the military, empowered the bureaucracy, and improved law and order. He prioritized food production, irrigation, primary education, and rural development, making significant strides in the reconstruction and development of Bangladesh. One of Zia's most impactful decisions was his focus on securing foreign aid. Many Western countries and international organizations were willing to provide substantial aid to Bangladesh since its independence. However, they stipulated that Bangladesh must shift away from socialism towards a more liberalized economic system. Under Mujib's rule, the government had been hesitant to make such concessions. But when Zia came to power, the situation had deteriorated to such an extent that aid became a desperate necessity. In 1977, to satisfy international donors, Bangladesh lifted restrictions on foreign investments, reactivated the stock market, reduced tariffs and duties, and began a gradual process of privatizing state-owned enterprises. This led to millions of dollars in foreign aid. During this period, the extensive public food system, which was heavily subsidized, and price restrictions were abolished. Imports of fertilizers, mechanized irrigation equipment, and pesticides were also allowed, leading to an increase in food production per acre, which was a critical development for a country with a large population. However, Zia's efforts to depoliticize the military and suppress opposition led to 21 coup attempts. On May 30, 1981, Zia was assassinated in Chittagong by some army officers, plunging Bangladesh back into turmoil. After a final military coup attempt, the Army Chief of Staff, Hussein Muhammad Irshad, took control of the country in 1983. To avoid Zia's fate, Irshad consolidated his power by increasing authoritarian measures. He banned unions and rival political parties, dissolved the constitution, and reinstated martial law. Despite his promises to transition the country to democracy, he consistently postponed elections and manipulated referendums to his advantage. However, Irshad resumed the economic reform process that Zia had initiated. A larger number of state-owned enterprises and businesses were privatized and allowed to compete in banking, insurance, and other financial services. The most significant initiative was a coordinated effort to stimulate export-oriented economic growth, inspired by the successes of Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. This initiative began with the establishment of an export processing zone in the country's southeast. Within this 450-acre zone, companies could import tax-free machinery, equipment, and raw materials, provided they were used to produce goods for export. This was supplemented by back-to-back letters of credit, a financial tool used to reduce the risk for foreign companies selling machinery and equipment to Bangladeshi business owners. As one of the least developed nations in the world, Bangladesh attracted several major non-governmental organizations, NGOs. While there had been government cooperation with these NGOs before, Irshad showed a high level of openness with them, allowing them to provide a range of services, from education and finance to healthcare and family planning. This was a bit unusual. Countries suffering from political instability, especially those led by military regimes, are typically reluctant to let NGOs take over such basic public services. These services are traditionally tools used by governments to ensure public support, and allowing non-state actors to take over is often feared to weaken the government's legitimacy. However, at the time, Bangladesh's government was too weak to provide all necessary services, and any attempt to raise taxes was seen as a more politically costly maneuver. Therefore, Irshad allowed NGOs to operate freely, and soon after, Bangladesh became a so-called laboratory for new experimental poverty-reducing initiatives. But in Bangladesh's story, two NGOs stood out and would forever change the nation. In 1976, Muhammad Yunus, a professor of economics, was deeply moved by the extreme poverty in the small village of Jobra near his home. He discovered that one of the main challenges the villagers faced was the lack of access to funds that could enhance their productivity. The country's banking system was either incapable of providing small loans to the poor or exploited them with exorbitant interest rates. After experimenting with various loan methods using his own money, Yunus introduced the modern concept of microcredit. Impoverished rural residents were asked to form groups of 5 and were each given small loans without the need for collateral. They were then guided on how to use these loans to purchase productive assets like cattle, improve farming, or start small businesses. Group members also supported each other during repayment difficulties, as any default by an individual could halt the entire group's access to future credit. This simple method proved to be highly effective, with 97% of loans being fully repaid. By the early 1980s, this system had spread nationwide. Yunus founded the NGO Grameen Bank in collaboration with the Irshad government and began using international donor capital. This led to a surge of NGOs in Bangladesh, reducing extreme poverty from 75% to 48%. Over a few decades, borrowers saw their income rise 43% higher than those who did not participate. Another NGO, the Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee, BRAC, was founded by Fazle Hassan Abid, who left his job in the UK to help those in need. BRAC initially built homes for refugees and established desperately needed medical centers. Its early success led to its rapid expansion into various other avenues for alleviating poverty. At that time, diarrhea was the leading cause of child mortality in Bangladesh. BRAC members taught mothers to prepare oral rehydration solutions. They also played a key role in distributing microcredit, specifically targeting impoverished women who faced extreme cultural discrimination in the country. This resulted in improved education and healthcare systems for children. Such programs also helped pave the way for greater acceptance of women in the economy. The Irshad government, BRAC, and other NGOs spearheaded an aggressive family planning campaign to reduce the soaring birth rate, bringing it down from nearly 7 births per woman in the 70s to just 2 today. Through efforts in establishing everything from primary schools, medical clinics, and hospitals, NGOs have significantly improved productivity, safety, health, and education among the country's poorest. This progress can be largely attributed to the substantial growth of NGOs during the Irshad administration, with over 26,000 operating in the country as of today. However, by 1990, Irshad's hold on power was beginning to wane as he continued to pass controversial legislations and halt elections to his advantage. Massive demonstrations, strikes, and protests began across the nation. This reached a point where the protesters were able to persuade the military to withdraw its backing of Irshad, subsequently forcing him to step down. Under the oversight of a neutral caretaker government, elections were held once again in the country, and Khalida Zia-ur-Rehman from BNP, the widow of General Zia-ur-Rehman, came into power. Under her leadership, Bangladesh continued on its trend of economic liberalization. This involved incentivizing foreign investors by allowing them to fully own industrial firms. The restrictions on currency exchange were lifted, and labor laws were simplified to make hiring more efficient and easier. Meanwhile, 7 new export processing zones were established in hopes of sustaining export-oriented growth. The rapid development of Asian giants like China, South Korea, and Vietnam served as inspiration for Bangladesh, identifying garments as a shared starting point for success. Bangladesh saw favorable conditions in the 1990s. Western garment manufacturers shifted their production units to Bangladesh, attracted by its status as a least developed country, which granted preferential duty-free trade with developed markets. The nation's low labor costs and affordable warehouse rentals led to a booming garment industry. Remarkably, around 90% of the workforce in these factories consisted of women, contributing not only to economic growth, but also to increased incomes for poor families. Between 1990 and 2021, the value of Bangladesh's garment industry skyrocketed from $640 million to over $34.2 billion, accounting for 81% of the nation's exports. This achievement positioned Bangladesh as the second-largest garment exporter globally, trailing only behind China. Furthermore, this economic success helped stabilize the nation by maintaining foreign reserves, addressing historical inflation and instability. As globalization expanded, Bangladeshi workers sought higher wages abroad, particularly in countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and other Gulf nations. Their remittances back home reached nearly $11 billion in 2010, a significant increase from the $778 million in 1990. The combined impact of exports and remittances allowed Bangladesh to invest more heavily in education, energy projects, and transportation infrastructure. Alongside the efforts of NGOs, this positive feedback loop contributed to the nation's remarkable economic progress. Between 1990 and 2020, Bangladesh maintained an impressive average GDP growth rate of 5.6%, making it one of the fastest-growing nations in the global economy. Today, Bangladesh looks vastly different from its state at the time of gaining independence. Nearly every quality of life indicator has seen significant improvements. The nation's progress over the past few decades can only be described as miraculous. Despite setbacks caused by the pandemic and geopolitical tensions, Bangladesh is already on the path to recovery. It benefits from its demographic dividend, but harnessing this potential effectively is crucial for securing a bright future. While there's ample room for further growth, the current government, led by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, daughter of Sheikh Mujib-ur-Rehman, appears hesitant to fully embrace this potential. In the 2024 general elections, Sheikh Hasina secured her 5th term as Prime Minister. However, her rule has been criticized for authoritarian tendencies since 2009. Allegations include cracking down on opposition parties and dismissing the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, as a terrorist organization. In a speech, she asserted that non-participation in elections doesn't negate democracy. Internationally, both the US and some European Union countries have taken confrontational stances due to concerns about human rights violations and election interference. Civil society figures warn that these challenges are pushing the government toward increasingly authoritarian tactics, including detaining political rivals and restricting NGOs and journalists. Bangladesh's destiny has undergone a remarkable transformation, largely influenced by liberalization policies during the 1980s and 1990s. But if the nation would not continue to stay on this path, they might lose all of their success. But we can only hope for the best. As Bangladesh is silently becoming the Asian giant, there is another country who screams its success, and that nation is its neighbor India. And if you want to know about how India is heading towards its glory future, click on the video to the right, and I will see you there.